We were reviewing some of the largest coffee franchises out there, and we realized we haven't done a video on Dunkin. So old school Dunkin Donuts since 2019. It's been called just Dunkin as they're trying to rebrand as being more of a beverage-led company. So think coffee, tea, and was thus rebranded as Dunkin in 2019. But going back to my childhood roots of going to the Dunkin Donuts in Vienna, Virginia, I still think of it as Dunkin Donuts. So you can call it Dunkin or even DD, American multinational coffee and donut chain. Again, focus more on the beverage side. And really just the year after, they made a transition to focus on beverages and move away from the donut side. In 2020, Inspire Brands, which is wholly owned by Roark Capital private equity fund with $33 billion in management with 50 plus brands. Inspire Brands, one of their holding companies, also owns Arby's, Buffalo Wild Wings, Sonic Drive-In, as well as Jimmy John's. They bought Dunkin Donuts, which was a publicly traded company, for $11.3 billion. You've heard that right. They spent $11.3 billion to take Dunkin off the stock exchange, which is its shares were priced at $106 per share. And this puts Inspire Brands as the number 2 spot in the US for food service companies by number of locations and sales, with 32,000 restaurants in 60 countries globally, making $26 billion in sales. I do hope Dunkin makes success in new markets like China they're trying to enter. They had entered Brazil years back. They were not successful. I know as of a few years ago, they were actively reaching out for prospective franchisees in Brazil and in other key markets that they were looking to grow in. I wish them all the best. Their international locations have not done as well as their US-based locations. They have 8,000 plus locations in the US and they have about 13,000 worldwide. Dunkin is one of the largest coffee shop chains in the world with 8,000 plus Dunkin locations in the US. There's very few in the same category. You have Starbucks. And then for coffee specific change, it drops way down. So you have some emergence. We've done videos on Dutch Bros, 7 Brew, Tim Hortons coming down from Canada. So there is competition in this space, especially the drive-through coffee space. Scooter's Coffee. There's other brands that are offering a similar drive-through experience with different beverage selection than Dunkin Donuts. So there is a lot of competition in this space right now. Franchise fee for Dunkin Donuts, $10,000 to $90,000. Depending on the type of store, it's going to be a 10 to 20 year franchise term. Do note that a 10-year franchise agreement is pretty standard in franchising in the US at least. So if it's going to be a self-service or freestanding drive-through location, the investment range is going to really vary anywhere from $120,000 to $1.8 million. The initial franchise fee, if it's 10-year on the self-service drive-through side, $40,000 to $90,000. If you're operating the Dunkin Donuts in a gas station or attached to a convenience store, the initial franchise fee is $10,000 to $45,000 and it's a 10-year term. Compared to other franchises like Biggby Coffee, it's a lower investment, $276 to $439. Scooter's Coffee, also less money. Tim Hortons' new model 7 Brew is going to be less generally than a Dunkin Donuts. Dunkin Donuts is less expensive though than a Starbucks. Where for a Starbucks with a drive-through, you can't even get those. It's more corporate that's developing those, and the licensed Starbucks that you can open up as an independent operator. Generally going to be over $1 million in a storefront. To open up a Dunkin, you need $250,000 liquid assets, minimum net worth of $500K per store. So say you want to open up 10 stores, you need $2.5 million liquid assets, and then the net worth needs to be $5 million. Continuing franchise fee, basically in lieu of a royalty, 5.9%. Average for restaurant, quick service restaurants is 5.3%. And then the advertising fee is a bit steep at 5%. Generally, we see more like 2% for restaurant franchises. Some of the data we have for Dunkins that are in the shopping center storefront, so think in a strip center, inline, or even an end cap, but without a drive-through. They have 1,200 of these locations doing sales about 1.3 million. Initial investment midpoint 1.1. Say you're doing a margin of 15%, you're making $180,000 on that. You could expect to get a payback in 8-9 years. Gas station convenience stores a little better in terms of the payback period. If you're going to do the drive-through model, the midpoint investment, this doesn't include the land, really no thrills, smaller unit, $537,000. Say you're doing a profit margin of 20%, you could expect your money back in about 5 years. If it's more like 10% profit margin, it could be longer. It could be more like 7 years. There's a lot of Dunkin' Donuts for sale that we saw on all different types of resources. Probably the best Dunkin' Donuts, though, are being bought by existing franchisees. So what you do see online with other systems too, the valuations tend to be lower and underreported what they're actually trading on. But Dunkin' Donuts do trade for a nice profit margin, where if you just have one Dunkin' Donuts, it might be 1 times revenue, 3 to 6x the EBITDA. If you have 10 Dunkin' Donuts, we're talking about 6 times the earnings, 6 times the EBITDA. So if you invested, say, $1 million in a Dunkin' Donuts, there's potential you could sell it for $1.4 million. It's going to depend on the type of store and how much money you're earning from the Dunkin' Donuts and how many Dunkin' Donuts you own. And if you're just selling one, you're not going to get an amazing gain on that. But if you're selling 5 and they're very profitable, then there's private equity funds and large franchisees that might be interested in buying your Dunkin' Donuts and willing to pay a higher multiple on the earnings that you're getting from those Dunkin' Donuts. A lot of Dunkin' Donuts have opened. A lot of Dunkin' Donuts have closed, especially in 2020. It's been pretty stable in terms of unit count. From 2019 end of year to end of year 2021, there's been a drop of about 200 or so locations. There's been openings. There were a lot of closures in 2020. About 800 locations closed in the United States, representing about 10% of their system. In 2021, there was a net gain of 220, but that does include quite a few closures. There were a lot of openings, but there were also quite a few closures in that. As of today, there's no company-owned stores. They're only franchise locations. Dunkin' Donuts is an incredible brand. People really recognize it. Just be careful how much you invest in the Dunkin' Donuts, because if you're investing $1.6, $1.7 million to open, it's going to be hard to get your return on capital, or at least you're going to have to develop multiple Dunkin' Donuts to get that return on capital back when it comes time to sell. But if you're opening a Dunkin' Donuts for $500K, it can make a lot of financial sense. So just be sure to do your due diligence, talk to existing franchisees of Dunkin' Donuts, and it might be worth looking at some Dunkin' Donut resales to see what's currently out there instead of developing one from the ground up.